But anyway, we have with us right now, we have Diffuse, which is Sup's runner, and Ithorian, Sup's heel monk here on with us for a post-match interview. All right, Diffuse, so whose strat calls for Sup?
It was pretty much a mixture of everyone. It was quite chaotic, to be honest.
Oh, it was pretty frantic. Was it like, especially towards that end where things just started to kind of hit the fan, people kind of scattered, and then you're trying to assign who goes where? Is that how it was going?
Yeah, pretty much. It was very chaotic. We haven't really played together that much. It's kind of a mixture of two guilds, just kind of reformed into one. And yeah, we've only kind of played a few ATs together as a whole guild, so it was a little bit messy, but we kind of got there in the end.
So who makes the build decisions for Sup? And you kind of caught everyone off guard with that double migraine at the final. Were you kind of, were you guys unconfident with your triple warrior?
Against Mojo we were, because we know they've played that build a lot. Like, they're very good at that build, so we didn't really want to mirror them and lose, because we haven't kind of played that build much together, so we kind of wanted to do something a little bit different, something that could give us an edge, and kind of played around with this build a bit and decided to go with it in the end. I think that was kind of Mike and Jackie's call. That's Ronaldo and Jackie.
So do you feel that you really caught him off guard with that build? Like, did it work?
Kind of. I'm not entirely sure if it was the best map for it. Maybe on Jade or somewhere it might have been a little bit better, but it was kind of our only kind of choice at the end of the day.
Early on in the game, where you really seemed to have sunk your teeth into Mojo, it really felt like it was sort of like a flag push. How attuned were your midline with how pressured their monks were?
I'm not entirely sure, to be honest. I was mostly concentrating on not letting our NPCs die at the time, so I think we were pretty aware that they were quite pressured though. It was just a case of getting ahead on flags and then stopping them from getting a flag out whilst they were splitting, so that we could have our full offense there, pushing.
Hello, hello.
Hi.
It's working now.
Yeah.
Hello, hello.
Well, okay. Well, now that we've got Ithorian, we've been seeing kind of like this triple physical, Necro midline, Ranger midline, sort of 8v push build, throughout this month. As a heal monk, how much burst is that able to put out, and do you find yourself having to infuse a lot against that?
You do, yeah. It's a lot of damage, and especially with this Mark of Fury as well, when they throw that on the target. Seems like once they finish spiking, they've got enough adrenaline to go ahead and spike a different target.
Do you think that midline Necro is a really big factor for that? Because we were talking about how effective that individual character is, and with that strip enchantment and the spam damage, it really seems like it would make your monks struggle.
It does, yeah, but the other team has to have a really well coordinated offense to pull it off. They generally have to deal with two balanced stances in this metagame. So they'll have the wild throw and the strip aura. Everything has to be perfectly timed to actually get a kill put through with the triple melee.
And do you think Mojo is one of those guilds that could do that? They seem to play a lot.
Oh yeah, definitely. That's why we rolled up this gimmick build. We actually played them in the Swiss rounds. They played the same build, and we only just won. But it was a very close game, so we weren't going to take that risk again. We're quite confident with this type of build. We'll go ahead and win.
Well, now that we got the monk and the flagger in here, really relevant question. This was kind of like the overriding theme for the MAT, and it really felt like it really set the course for a lot of these games. When the enemy team makes a pretty aggressive push on your flagger, or your writ in general, what's the proper response to that? We see a lot of teams having to leave the writ at the stand or like near the stand in order to get their party healing and support off, and they seem to get stuck with an offense character running the flag, and it really seems to put them in this rut where they can't get any offense up. What is the proper response to that kind of a push from the enemy team?
Depends how much they invest into it, but I guess like the Necro helps a lot if you've got removal for the cripple, and you can start to degen out their offense. If they're away from monks, then they have to pull back. But yeah, I don't know really. I guess it depends. If they're just pushing you whilst you're at the stand, then just get help from the monks and the Necro, and you can always push up like a Sin or a warrior onto them. If they're pushing you whilst you're actually flagging, then it tends to be just the Necro goes back and removes cripple and stuff, and you tend to be okay. And then you just kind of get spirits and party heals off when you can, really. Yeah.
At what point would a team make a decision to kind of just give up flags? Because it seemed like there was a good point where Mojo was thinking about getting those flags in, but eventually they just had to stop. Like, at what point do you not even like bother? Like, let's say they're not even like full morale, because that's kind of obvious.
If you're like degenning out and not able to get any party heals off whatsoever, then that's a pretty good time not to run a flag. And if you know that they're gonna snare pretty hard and it's gonna take a long time to get the flag in, and your monks don't have the energy, or then yeah, it's probably not a good idea.
We've got well, okay, in the previous match when you were facing I believe it was VR. Wait, was it VR?
I think it was OG, was it?
OG, yeah, that's right. OG up on Jade. We saw that they've gained quite a bit of an advantage, and then kind of did a no flag kind of 8-man push. Were you aware that they hadn't picked up a second flag when they were aggressively pushing? It looked like you were just barely able to keep yourself from wiping, and then kind of bounced back. Did you guys know that they hadn't run a second flag after that one?
At the end, towards the end, I think there was a push where we were kind of aware that they didn't have a flag here. So it was just a case of kind of keeping alive and holding it off and then pushing them back once we had the flag advantage. So, yeah, if you mean towards the end, I don't know if it happened earlier on.
It was kind of like midway through. It was like before you got the first big wipe on them.
Yeah, maybe I'm thinking of a different time then.
Yeah, it was a bit of a back and forth game. With I believe it was Assault Enchantments, or what you have on your Assassin in that Jade game. It was kind of like this. It was on your Assassin. You were really able to drop their heal monk over and over. Like, is that a really big deal? And do you think it might be a little bit OP?
Definitely Assault Enchantments. That definitely needs
Yeah,
to be
yeah.
looked at.
Yeah.
Prior to our two guilds merging together, sup in SC, we lost to SC playing that build, that Assault Enchantment, so I can tell you firsthand it's definitely unbalanced. Yeah, you kind of get guardian off, and if the hammer warrior is switching targets, getting your balanced off and stuff, you just get trained down.
Oh, looks like we got. We do have Jackie in here. I believe that's the Ranger for Sup.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
So you're the Ranger for Sup, right? Or am I correct?
Yeah, I am.
I noticed throughout all the games that we were watching with your guild in it, one thing that you seem to be really on top of is making sure the other Ranger does not get a supply off. Like, could you describe to our listeners how important that is for your pressure and keeping your own team alive?
Well, I mean, with the metagame now being people pushing on flaggers and party heal being so key, like, if I get applied down, we get some space to not have to party heal as much, and then we could potentially run on a flagger, or at the very least stabilize if we do have party healing instead. So when we're low, it's, yeah, pretty vital to get applied down.
And it really feels like Ranger, especially as a role in, a GVG team, it's kind of like this really diffuse kind of, sorry, didn't mean diffuse your player, but kind of like this really obscure, ambiguous sort of role where you're kind of not doing very visible amounts of damage. It's degen spreading, and then you got to balance that with your interrupting, and then pushing on flaggers with your crypt. It's all really kind of kind of amorphous. Like, what kind of advice could you give kind of like a mid-range GVG player to really hone up their priority setting on range?
Well, the way I play it, and I get a lot of negative feedback from some players for doing this, but I think like you spread poison, that's easy. You just tab around and like use Savage sometimes to spread poison. But apart from that, like when I want to interrupt a player, I tend to actually stay near them and I'll actually let them know that I'm trying to interrupt them, because the psychology that releases, like there are players who literally do not want to cast. I have monks who just don't RC or WoW when target dies and I don't need to do anything at that point.
Yeah, I believe you brought that up, or Yui from back in the day. Like you can just like stand next to someone and interrupt someone else and be controlling 2 players at once.
Yeah, I tend to do that with like Control and Ellie or another midliner who have longer casts and stand like follow a monk. But if they're really under pressure, don't hesitate to actually follow the monk and use your interrupts. At that point they'll start cancelling and then their energy goes low and it doesn't matter. And then aside from that, there's the tactical flag pushing. I mean, in this metagame it's very difficult. I think if as a ranger you haven't learned to erupt very well yet and you're not good 8v8, then definitely flag pushing is something like everyone should try and establish. I think especially versus spike teams, when you flag push, then it becomes very hard for them to spike, and that really tends to win game.
Another ranger related question: if when you're pushing a flagger, how soon do you have to let your monk know? Like if you happen to see danger coming in, like some sort of cancel stance on like a hammer warrior or like a snare or something like that. Like how early should a ranger kind of let their monk know that they anticipate trouble?
Well, I always tell our monks to push up, and sometimes because of the stress of the game, they don't always take note. At that point, like if a physical player is going for you, it really becomes your own job to keep yourself alive by crip-shotting him and then crip-shotting the flagger as well. And then basically as soon as I notice a melee coming for me, I'll ask for one of our monks to push up, and if they can, I tend to live. If not, I try and balance my stances around.
So I noticed in a lot of these builds there's lots of multiple snares. Now, you being the crip shot and being very kind of focused on that role, how often do you defer to a different snare in order to focus on something else like poison spreading or interrupting?
What do you mean exactly?
Like, a lot of the builds that we see nowadays have multiple snares, like not just the ranger, but like sometimes a water alley or a snare on the runner, or like an assassin with some sort of cripple. How often would a ranger defer to a different snare to handle flag pushing in order to deal with some other task that they'd be doing?
Well, I think really the ranger is most effective, and I can't really speak too much from past experience because all of the builds we've ran in the MAT have had me as the sole snare, except the dual migraine build, but Spank played defensively with that. I think if you can, you should get your water alley to do it. Like we played split on one game, and obviously our water alley is sometimes effective if you're needed to play defensive for whatever reason, or say your snare, like you need to push up for snares, and at that point it becomes best if your water alley pushes up, and then your crip shot snares whoever would follow that water alley. So like you think in advance, and then you stop them from collapsing your water alley. And crip shot's good for that because it can quickly snare multiple targets. So if you anticipate like a huge collapse going on whatever you're going to use to snare, at that point then crip shot becomes better to stay at stand while your water alley goes to snare him.
That makes a lot of sense. Do we have any other questions, like Igor, Ingra, anyone?
I guess I have one question. How do you feel about running the assassin instead of one of the warriors in a 2 frontline build? Do you think it actually puts out more pressure than 2 warriors would? And I mean, obviously it has the added benefit of being able to split better and train out a prop monk or something. But do you think it's actually that much more effective to take it every single time in a pressure build?
I think it was pretty key for our migraine build because of the lack of enchant removal on our midline. That was like one of the main reasons for taking this in. So I don't think we had any, maybe 1 or 2 enchant strips on one of our mesmers.